Okay.
One day I basically just had a complete breakdown. I was out with my cycling buddies, which is a huge passion of mine, on a Sunday morning. Went down a hill at 52.5 miles an hour on my push bike, and then literally at the bottom of the hill I just started crying, and they were just like, "Holy crap, are you all right, Rob?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be fine. Just go and get the coffee and cake ready, and I'll come and meet you in a bit at the cafe." And I went to a quiet place which I knew on the way to the cafe, away from my friends, and I just started to contemplate, like, where did this all come from? And it had been building, I realized, for a long period of time. And the upshot of it was, I went home. I said to my heavily pregnant wife, I said, "I got some good news and some bad news." She said, "What was the good news first?" I said, "Well, I've made a decision about the future of my business." She's like, "Oh, great. It sounds exciting. What is it?" "Well, that's the bad news. I want to close it." I gave him a copy of my first book and I said, "Listen, I think you should read this." I walked over to the door and I opened it and said, "You can leave now." I said, "Our conversation's over and this is only 5 minutes in. Do you fancy having a bet?"
Okay.
Okay. If you can start conversations with 10 people and all of them say no to you, I'll become your first client. I'll pay you €3,600.
Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can.
Who's the one number you'd call if you were on a quiz show and it came down to business and it came down to your product portfolio and it came down to pricing and it came down to generating leads? I can tell you who I'd call. I'd call Robin Waite. He's the UK's top business coach. He's coached over 1,000 business owners from 30 different countries. He's a multiple best-selling author, Take Your Shot, Marketing Machine, Online Business Startup, and his latest, fresh from the press, is the Fearless Business Blueprint. He's a husband, dad, surfer, and cyclist, and co-Vizsla dog breed lover. Hands down, one of the sharpest business minds I've met. In the episode, we kind of flip the script. We go through a fictional business. We start off with my podcast business, which isn't much of a business. It's a podcast. And soon that morphs into a fictional coaching business. We look at how I would structure it, how I would price it. And within 90 minutes, he's doubled my pricing. And he makes a bet live with me on air that if I can't get a client in 10 consultations with 10 prospects, he'd be my first client and he would give me €3,600 for Peter Charles Weller's A to B Confusion to Clarity life coaching program. I absolutely loved it. It was fun. Oh yeah, and about this bet, he's super confident he's going to win. And I'm going to see about that. So if you're a founder, if you're building a business, if you have your own business and pricing, your product, getting leads are pain points of yours, have a listen to this episode. Reach out to me if you want to get in touch with Robin. And I hope you enjoy Robin Waite as much as I do. Enjoy the show. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this very exclusive corner of chaos. We have a very special guest today in our midst, Robin Waite. I'm very happy that he's joining us because my life is pretty chaotic at the moment, I'd say. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm embracing some of that chaos. We were chatting off air and I'm like juggling, wife's away working. I know the kids are coming back imminently and the dogs are at sleep at the moment. So anything could erupt during this. But yeah, very excited to be here, Peter.
Are you also always in kind of prioritization mode, triaging this, whatever comes in front of you? What are we going to do with it? Is it urgent? Is it important?
Well, very much so. But my priority is, I don't know whether Mrs. Waite agrees with this. My priority is family. Like, she's a lawyer. Has to hold down, full-time job as it stands at the moment. So yeah, I'm constantly having to juggle, like just check in with meetings. And my eldest daughter's like getting ready to do county swimming championship. So that's going to take up a lot of time. So I'm constantly like operations and logistics, but it's great when I actually get like periods of time just to sit and coach and meet some interesting people like yourself and have these conversations.
Oh,
Because
cool.
that's when I find my flow and I can actually forget about all of that organization stuff. I get tired doing organization. Yeah. Coaching lights me up.
So you've had a very fascinating journey, I find. You've had a very successful marketing business. You published multiple books, one of which I read, Take Your Shot, which was excellent. Can we just reflect on your journey? Because you're now a very successful coach. You have a marketing background. Can you just walk us through some of the journey of Robin Waite?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it potted because I recognize we've only got, what did you say, 5 hours for this podcast? No. I kind of did very traditional sort of upbringing in terms of like my schooling and things like that. And I'm fortunate, middle class white guy brought up in England, I had a lot of opportunities. I decided quite early on actually that I wanted to run businesses. So, and actually my first foray into sort of earning my own money, I did things like paper rounds and worked at my local pub and things like that to, waiting on tables and things like that. And that gave me that initial taste of financial independence. But actually come 18, I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. I ended up working as a systems analyst for 4 years and also studying for a degree whilst I tried to figure out this whole business thing and what products I wanted to sell and who I was going to sell it to and things like that. And actually it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life actually working at that company because the boss, bless him, was the loveliest guy and he was so talented when it came to product design, but had literally zero, kudos in my eyes in terms of when it came to running a business. Whatever I did, I was like, whatever business I start up, I was like, I'm not going to run it the way that he ran it because, he literally ran it into the ground in the end and it went under. Not whilst I was there, I should say. It was still just about holding water whilst I was there. But the first business, actually, the marketing agency, we founded that in 2004. And the idea behind that was we would, and the internet was very young still at that time. It was only sort of in its infancy at sort of 10, 12 years old. So websites were very novel. We used to do a lot of branding work as a result of that because there's nothing worse than sort of putting your business online, but with an awful logo or brand, to back it up. So quite often we'd end up having conversations with people about sort of their long-term strategy, and saying to them, well, actually your logo looks rubbish. If we build you a beautiful website and slap that on there, we should probably update your branding as well. And we did that. That business grew. We got to just shy of 250K. I had a small team of 4 people, possibly slightly dysfunctional because they were led by me. We had about 180 clients. So it was a really great local agency, and this was back in the day when you could actually afford to hire, more than one person without it bankrupting your business. But one day, and I don't know how much you know about this part of the story, but you're welcome to sort of quiz me on it as we go through it. But one day I basically just had a complete breakdown. I was out with my cycling buddies, which is a huge passion of mine, on a Sunday morning, went down a hill at 52.5 miles an hour on my push bike, and then literally at the bottom of the hill I just started crying. My cycling buddies, I didn't know them particularly well at that point, and they were just like, holy crap, are you all right, Rob? And I was like, yeah, I'll be fine, just go and get the coffee and cake ready and I'll come and meet you in a bit at the cafe. And I went to a quiet place which I knew on the way to the cafe, away from my friends, and I just started to contemplate, where did this all come from? And it had been building, I realized, for a long period of time. And the upshot of it was I went home to my now heavily pregnant wife with our second daughter. She's 8 months pregnant. We had 2 planned cesareans. We also had a due date. We knew exactly when Sophie was going to arrive. And I said to my heavily pregnant wife, I said, I got some good news and some bad news. And she could see that I was a bit of a wreck. She's like, okay, well, hit me up with the bad news. What's going on? And I said, no, she said, what was the good news first? I said, well, I've made a decision about the future of my business. She's like, oh, great. Sounds exciting. What is it? Well, that's the bad news. I want to close it. So, of course, international sign of distress goes up and, heavily pregnant. But anyway, she couldn't have been more supportive. She realized that actually that business was crushing me because I didn't really have much direction with it. We kind of just ended up after 12 years of this successful little agency, but it wasn't really growing much, but it was stressful, lots of late nights and things like that. But also it just wasn't fulfilling me. I suppose that's a good point. If there's quite, because I'm sure you already went
no, I'm glued to the screen and the mic. I'm fascinated by that. It takes real courage to pivot like that, to find this is not sustainable anymore. Sure, if you looked at how the business was doing, that would be a lot of people's success or idea of success. But for you, it wasn't ticking these boxes. Would you mind kind of explaining what kind of boxes it wasn't ticking?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you run a service client business. Obviously, the natural tendency is for you to step into that servant type mode. So just doing whatever the client asks, you do that. And so that's how I basically run my business for the best part of 12 years. There were some learnings. We made a progression, but I could see there were things that I needed to do, should be doing, dare I say it, but I couldn't figure out how to get there. And I saw other businesses that were more successful, and the owners seemed to be having more fun than me and were making more money than me and things like that. So, and I just felt we were a bit trapped with lots of late nights and very demanding clients. And yeah, we were making good money, but we could have been doing better. And it was so all of those things, like, and not having an answer to it immediately. And I thought, and what had happened is so part of this was depression. I'd been slowly sinking into a state of depression. And it's like sleep debt. It creeps. You lose 10 minutes here or 15 minutes there or an hour here or there or whatever, and you don't quite catch it up. And gradually you get this creeping sort of malaise, coming in. That's what I had over a period of about 2 years. And it culminated with me just having this implosion, basically. I was really fortunate. When I made the decision in my head, that decision, right, I'm going to close it, I had the just most enormous sense of relief. And
Wow.
it wasn't just relief that I was walking away from something. It was just the relief at having come to a conclusion, like made a decision. And I think this is something which a lot of people really struggle with. They kind of end up getting trapped in whatever circumstances they've created for themselves. And the thing which traps them is the indecision. And or our worry about whether it's going to be the right or wrong decision. That's what stops us from actually making it. And quite frankly, whether I'd imploded and then it had forced me to do something different with the agency, or imploded and closed it down, or kept it going but put a CEO in, which with hindsight and my knowledge now, that's what I would have done with it. I don't live with regret, but certainly it's nice to know that there would have been a solution there had I been aware of it. But it was just that I got that massive overwhelming sense of relief. And then I knew that there was a setup of the business where I could send my team on their way. I could wind down new projects, and I could still generate some residual income from hosting and service fees, which I'd built up. But in the meantime, what happened was people started to hear that I kind of closed the doors in the agency, and somebody came in with an offer, not for much money, but they offered to buy out the client base and a bit of intellectual property. And so I was able to walk away relatively kind of guilt-free. There's always this nagging feeling of kind of feeling like I'd let my team down and let the clients down and these sorts of things. My team couldn't have been better. When I went in to tell them and I said, look, that's it. They were like, firstly, they were like, we kind of saw it coming, like, not surprised. But two, like, we're glad you've made this decision. We'll find jobs. Don't worry. It's been wonderful to work with you. So they literally couldn't have been more supportive. Same with Charlotte, my wife, once she got over the initial shock, she's been brilliant. And but then you go into like, well, what happens next? And so I've turned into a people person. I like hanging out with people. So I started going to networking meetings with no agenda because I had no product or business to sell at this point, and started telling my story. And that really resonated with people. Like, oh my, so you left your business, you managed to find a buyer for it. So again, there's a theme here, but in exchange for coffee and cake, people would pay to pick my brains, basically, agency owners who were interested in selling. And so I did this informal mentoring for a while. And then it was during that sort of 3-month period where I didn't charge anything for it, but was having these really like high level strategic conversations. And in particular, talking about things like pricing and lead generation and sales conversations. And how did I get a business to 250K, and how did I sell these big projects? I realized that was a thing actually which lit me up. I never had the opportunity to explore during the agency. And there was one particular story, and again, Peter, like, please do stop me, or if I'm wrong direction. There was one particular, about 2 weeks before this implosion happened, and maybe this also contributed towards it. But there was nothing wrong with the guy, but this guy came he was lovely enough, but he came into my office to do a consultation for a website, and he was hitting retirement age, and he said, I've got 2 years left in me. I want to get a website set up for me. It's a local mechanics. They're doing servicing, MOTs and things like that. So I want to double my revenue, get a website set up, double my revenue, and then sell it, for 500K in 2 years' time. I was like, cool, that's a good plan, good solid plan. I like that. I said, shall we run the numbers? No, I just want to talk about a website. I was like, I think we should run the numbers just to make sure that, your business model stacks up, and we can do that in 2 years. So I started whiteboarding just ideas of, how much the average client spend with you? What happens if their wife or husband comes in and they also get their car service there? How much it costs for like an exhaust and sets of tires? So I was just, how many clients have you currently got? How many do you upsell products to? So I was doing all this, like just running all of the numbers in the business, right? Things that every business should do, average order value, customer lifetime value, all of those different things. And I kid you not, Peter, he did the big hand to me. He put his hand up in my face and he went, no, Robin, I just want a website. He swore at me. So I said, okay, I hear you. Said, but what I've just done here, I don't think just a website is going to do it. I think you need to invest some more money. You need a bit of a website and a marketing campaign, and maybe somebody in your office doing some admin towards this. And no, I just want to. And he kept on back. So in the end, I gave him a copy of my first book, and I said, listen, I think you should read this. I walked over to the door and opened it and said, you can leave now. I said, our conversation's over, and this is only 5 minutes in. But I think in that moment, having the confidence to just straight up say no to somebody was such a boost to me.
Why did you say no? Was it because it didn't support the goal you had, or you felt that this was a deep thing? If I helped this guy, it wouldn't be me. I'd be wanting to be on the whiteboard and perfecting what was going on.
It was disingenuous because I could sell him a website any day of the week, but it wouldn't have got him to his goals. But then who ultimately would he have pointed the finger at when it didn't work? And I was like, that's me. So I didn't feel comfortable selling him a website because it wouldn't have got him what he wanted. But there were times in the past within the agency where we did take projects on literally just for the money because we didn't know better at the time. We thought that the whole job of running a business was to enroll as many clients as you possibly can do. And that was the first time. Probably I'm a bit of a slow learner, I don't know, but sort of 12 years into a business, you'd think you might have got it quicker than that, Robin. But but that was the first moment where I felt fully empowered just to say no to a client. And I didn't think about the money it was more about the consequences of that decision. And again, that's something which I teach all business owners now, is the power of the no. Is like, the job in business, the goal in business is not to enroll as many clients as you possibly can do and become everybody's friend and make them happy. The job is to build a profitable and sustainable business. And that's where then you get into kind of the strategy and the pricing conversations, and you can actually ignore marketing for a good period of like the initial coaching part of the coaching journey because it's irrelevant. This is probably transitioning a little bit, but I see a lot of business owners who are very hung up now in 2025 thinking about like social media and marketing and attention and audience growth and all of these things. All relevant, but for the wrong reasons, actually. Imagine you've got a business that's doing £100,000 a year, but it's not profitable. And now you want to add more clients, drive more clients into this business where the model is just, it's not working. So my view is you focus on strategy, pricing, sales processes first and foremost, set the business up for success and profitability. It delays things slightly to redesign that business, but then you turn on the marketing tap and all of a sudden it's like go time. It's like the afterburners on a SpaceX rocket.
Yeah. And to set the foundation strong with the key pieces that you mentioned there. I mean, Robin, it's lovely listening to you. I don't think we need a warm up at all, but we'll do fact or fiction anyway. I'll throw some statements your way. You can tell me if they're fact or fiction. You can spend a minute or so reflecting on them if you want to.
Fab.
Are you ready?
Yes, let's go for it.
Confidence is the most important factor when taking your shot in business. What's up, lovely people? Quick one from me. Just wanted to let you know I've sent my poop through the mail 5 times. Not because I lost a bet with Robin Waite, but because of science. Now, in one of my favorite episodes, I sat down with the CEO of Inner Buddies, a young, up-and-coming Dutch company, a spin-off of Maastricht University, and the company that makes this whole poop in a box experience actually insightful and fun. So they analyze poop. They do this to study the microbiome, to study your health. And I've done it 5 times throughout this journey, lasting over 3 years with them. I've lost 30 kilos. I've defeated chronic hand eczema, something the doctors told me I would have to put up for life. And in this episode with Crystal Creek, the CEO, we look at my results of one of my recent poop tests. And the gut microbiome results showed a suspicious absence of farting. I'm just telling you one of the funny insights. But anyway, my gut, silent library, right? Which has got me thinking, kind of want to see my wife's test too. But anyway, I digress. So in this episode, she unlocks her brain when it comes to nutrition and the small but powerful tweaks you and I can both make to our nutrition that have a massive upside when it comes to our overall gut microbiome and our overall health, right? So check out the boys and girls at www.innerbuddies.com. Get yourself one of these poop in a box test kits and use the code WELLERGUTS at checkout. Now, back to the show. Are you ready?
Yes, let's go for it.
Confidence is the most important factor when taking your shot in business.
100%. Absolutely. Fact.
Wow.
That's an easy one.
Pricing is a reflection of confidence, not just market value.
Fact. Yes.
Doing pretty good. Goals help you prioritize what matters most.
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Goals help you prioritize what matters most. I'm going to go with fiction, actually, because there's a couple of constituent parts to that. So a goal is like punching in the postcode into the sat nav. So it's the start of the journey, but understanding the requisite parts of the journey that are going to get you there actually is more important, because there are things which will confuse or distract you and take you off target if you're not careful. So yes, it's a major part of it, but it's not all of it. So
So is
fiction.
the plan.
Yep.
Okay. Burnout only happens when you're not passionate about what you're doing.
Well, that's not true at all. I've seen many very passionate people dive headfirst into burnout because they're doing too much of the thing which they love. So fiction.
I mean, I've seen it recently pop up time and time again, this kind of this idea. Fear is the biggest barrier to achieving your goals.
Fear is the biggest barrier to achieving your goals. I'm gonna go with fiction on that, because actually,
Okay.
again, there's other parts to it. I would suggest that, again, fear is a big part of it, but quite often people set unrealistic expectations to themselves. A really practical example of it. I had a guy who wanted to go headfirst into doing a Facebook ads business, so he had no fear there. When I asked him what his experience of doing Facebook ads was, he said none. So, you know, it can work both ways, if that makes sense. Like, not having
Absolutely.
any fear can also, you know, end you up in hot water, because it can make you complacent.
Understanding your audience is the secret to effective selling.
I'm going to go with fiction on that one as well.
Okay.
On the basis that I see the thing which stops people from selling is less about their audience, it's more about the belief in their own product or service.
Wow. Okay.
So they will. So a question I ask audiences quite regularly is like, could you, if you had to, could you offer 100% cast iron money back guarantee on your product? And pretty much majority of the room, like 90% of the room, will say, oh, absolutely no. And then the first thing they'll say is, oh, well, it depends. It depends on whether the client does what they're supposed to do. It depends on all these different circumstances. So ultimately what it comes down to is that what they've done is because of their lack of confidence in their product or service, they've overcompensated by probably trying to introduce too many offerings within their thing to kind of water it down. Or maybe they work with too many clients because they want to be creative. I see that quite often as well. But if you do one thing really well for one specific type of client, you become an expert in it, because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again for similar clients over and over and over again.
Right.
So again, there's some truth, and yes, you've got to have an idea of who that client is you're going to do that one thing really well for. But if it's not systemized or process driven, if you're not an expert at doing that thing and you don't have the confidence to do it, well, again, you're going to get stuck or caught out sort of partway through the process.
Okay. Systems are the ultimate superpower for building and scaling businesses.
I disagree with that. So I'm going to go with fiction on that as well, actually. Systems are helpful. Again, it helps you to leverage. But again, I've seen people try and scale businesses because they think that's what they should be doing. And the reality is, like, and I've been through this journey myself, actually. I want to give a personal anecdote. So talking about probably 3 years into my journey as a coach, I went to, you said quick fire. So again, if my
No, please.
So about 3 years into my journey as a coach, I started getting on the scaling bandwagon because I thought that's what coaches should do, you know, go for shoot for the moon, the 7-figure thing. And again, it made me absolutely miserable. And the reasons why was you can reach a plateau kind of, or a point like of growth fairly organically, and it feel easy and effortless. The moment you start scaling and you have to build the systems and put more money behind advertising and bringing a team into all of these responsibilities start to grow astronomically. Some people, they're made for that. They're young enough, they have the energy and they have the determination and the passion, something you mentioned earlier on, and their head is just designed to go with that. I realized 3 years into my coaching journey that I just wasn't aligned with scaling at all. And actually, because, you know, I had a young family, and I wanted them to be a priority. I didn't want them to not see me because I was on this business scaling bandwagon, systemizing everything out of my business. So actually I retreated and I went back to slow organic growth. And actually I look at my business now and I'm glad that I did that. And there was one particular mistake I made. So we were trying to grow it through Facebook ads. And I was spending at the time, I suppose it's all relative, but to me at the time, it was a huge amount of money, £3,000 a month on Facebook ads to get more leads in. And then 8 months into this campaign, it just died. Like, spoke to several experts and they couldn't tell me what was up with my ads. And I'm pushing, I'm trying to scale, and I've grown my team and I've got all this stuff going on, but now I've got no leads coming in. So I'm hemorrhaging money. And it took me 3 months to figure out what had happened. And during those 3 months, I continued to burn through 3K a month on ads alone, let alone the team to support now the lack of leads that are coming in and everything else. So that almost pushed me like it back to like that point of burnout again. So systems is helpful, but you also have the desire to want to scale your business and support those systems, I think, is the short version of what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I notice a real sense that you're very aware of where you want to be. You're kind of in alignment, I would say, in terms of what you want from your business and what role it plays in your life.
Yeah. So I've got, last financial year, we got to 240K revenue. So I pretty much matched my agency, and it is me and I have one other guy full-time working in my team. So it's just the two of us. So I've got incredible. To the same financial goal with fewer people in a shorter period of time, which is good. I'm quite happy with that. But that growth over the last 5 years, when we switched off the scaling thing and just chose to go organic, I tell you what, even just the satisfaction of just seeing it.
If this podcast has made you laugh, think, or question your entire life plan while loading up the dishwasher or doing a diaper, do me a favor, please subscribe. Hit that follow button on Spotify. It's free and it helps me more than you know. And yes, it means the absolute world to me. Now, real talk. I don't just want listeners, I want a community. So I want feedback, ideas, or a coach you swear by. I want to hear from you. So either hit me up in the Spotify comments section or head to www.coachmeifyoucan.show and send me a message. I'll actually read them and I'll actually reply. And if you've never done a Wheel of Life assessment, drop me a note. I'll send you one for free. Once you get your results, you can choose the category and I will find you a coach for a free get to know you session. No catch, no weird funnel, no weird PDFs, just real conversations. I want to get people coached. So yeah, go to www.coachmeifyoucan.show, be nosy, say hi, back to the show.
Grow nice and steady each and every year, and the different revenue streams which I've been able to kind of pull into the business and things like that. And it feels easy and effortless. That works for me. It's not everybody's goal, but that for me works. It means that, like August, for example, I took August off entirely for the first time last year. And then I also, this year, I had a majority of actually like the Christmas period as well. So I was off from December the 18th right the way through. I did a little trip to Dubai as well. So I didn't go back to work until the 14th of Jan. So that's another month. So effectively last year, I've had 2 months out and it didn't hurt my revenue one jot. Like we had solid cash flow, still able to manage the leads that are coming in organically. And it just felt like I spent more time with my family than ever spent. Whether they like that or not, I don't, that's another question, but you know,
I'm sure they did.
but it's having the freedom to have like, and those options, basically. I think that's far more important for me. It's not for everybody, but that's what I want to achieve.
What would you say to someone thinking, so thanks for playing Fact or Fiction, by the way, that was great.
Excellent.
What would you say?
Was that quotes out of my book, was it? That you were...
Parts of them, yeah.
Nice. I did recognize.
Yeah, and stuff from Daniel Priestley and Napoleon Hill was in there, some kind of things.
Nice, very nice.
What would you say to someone who's kind of wants to start a business and is looking ahead in terms of what will fit with me? What will fit? What should I commit to? There are so many ideas, and I notice, at least in my circles, a real kind of fear enabling them to make any decision, the fear of failure, taking that first step.
I suppose first of all, you'd ask the question sort of why. And business owners, I always see there's like people in the startup space, it's a carrot or a stick. They're either being hit with a stick and want to leave a job and do something different, or there's a carrot there, which is, well, I kind of like my job, but I could see myself doing this entrepreneur thing and maybe making a bit more money or getting some freedom for myself, or maybe it's just something which I'll find a bit more fulfilling. First of all, ask yourself, like, why am I thinking about making this transition? You touched on something there around the idea, like is it around sort of how do you settle on an idea for a business? Was that sort of where you were heading?
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to like determining the idea, there's always sort of 3 criteria which I encourage people to sort of look at. If you've got several ideas floating around, I always recommend get a sheet of paper and draw one slightly wider column on the left-hand side of that sheet of paper. And on it, write down a list of each of the ideas that you've got, the things that you could potentially do. It could be things that you're passionate about, that you enjoy. It could be things that you maybe make some money out of, or, you know, and like in 2025, there's very few things that you can't make money out of these days, right? So take the handbrake off, just do a brain dump. Imagine you're in a corporate brainstorming session and not everything's on the table. And then against each idea, you then want to write down three criteria and score them on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
So first column, scale of 1 to 10, how passionate am I about this idea? So that's the first one. The second one is there an audience of people out there who need this thing?
Okay.
Scale that on a 1 to 10. And then the third column is how much money could I potentially make from this on a scale of 1 to 10? Obviously 10 being lots of it. And you can create your own criteria as well. It could be, would this idea give me more time freedom? Would this idea make me feel more fulfilled? Would this idea give more back to society? So you can kind of build ikigai into it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Whatever your criteria are, tot them up. And then generally speaking, you should end up with 1 or 2 at the top of that list that have scored really highly. And then that's the idea that you can start to pursue. Once people have honed in on an idea, though, this is where some of the big mistakes start to creep in. So a lot of people follow traditional routes of starting up a business, which there is some justification relevance as to why you do these things. But I've got an ulterior perspective. So what they do is they go, oh, right, okay, great. I've got my idea. Now I need to get some branding done. I need to get a website done. I need to go. So they start going down. I need to get all my social media set up and I need to make some videos to go onto my social media. And it like, and about 6 months down the line, they eventually go and speak to like a mentor or a coach and they say, my business isn't working and I don't know why. And I get this all the time. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, how many of your products or services have you sold? And they're like, none. Okay, great. How many have you tried to sell? Oh, none. Oh, what have you been doing? I've been building a website, doing my branding, getting my social media set up. I've done loads of videos on my social, but nobody wants my product, right? So we rewind the clock 6 months, we pretend we're starting all over again and we go, right, now the goal is to go out and test the market. So you've got an idea of who you think your product would be a good fit for. Go and speak to 10 of your friends who fit that profile and see if they would be interested in your product or service. Don't try and sell them, just see if they would be interested. Because what I've discovered is that most people with a good solid idea, their first 10 clients are already in their close network. They already know their first 10 clients. And they trust you enough that they'll buy something from you, irrespective of whether you've got a website or social media or branding done or anything like that. They're just like, oh, that sounds like a good idea and I like you, so let's just go for it. Especially in the corporate world. So if somebody has a job, a successful career, and they're stepping out to go and do work, especially if it's related to or start a business that's related to their existing job, typically the first thing I say is go and speak to your existing employer and ask them, if you set up a business doing this, would they be your first client? And you can actually judge whether it's a good employer or not, because if they're a good employer, they'd be like super pumped for you and like happy to invest in you. And, you know, because you've given so much to their business. Let's face it, the not so good employers are going to get the hump and be like, oh, well, you're competing against us. We don't want to work with consultants. And no, how rude, you're fired. Right. So, you know, that's quite telling as well about whether you've made the right decision or not. So,
Interesting.
But yeah, just reach into your existing network and try and see if somebody's interested in it. And then from there, you can then start to scale it.
Okay. I mean, this sets up quite nicely. What we typically do here, Robin, is we hand over the reins. I hand over the reins to you and we do a coaching session. It's the heart of the show, really, because I found coaching needs some demystifying, I call it. Lots of it happens behind kind of closed curtains. And I had loads of friends in mind, family members, when I thought, what would they benefit from some of these coaching sessions that I'm doing and just making it available to them. So that's the kind of context of the coaching challenge. So we can talk about anything really. We can talk about the podcast. I have my year 1, year 3 goals for the podcast ready. I have a purpose statement I tried to make, but we can also talk about something completely different. I've got a wheel of life assessment, Peter's take on Peter's different slices of chaos. So yeah, it's
okay. So, you know, I'm going to do the very traditional coachy thing. Which direction would you like to head in? Which idea fires you up the most that you would love to get some coaching?
The podcast, for sure.
Talk to me then about why you started the podcast in the first instance, and what it is that you're hoping to achieve through the podcast.
Okay. I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen friends, family members who've been stuck for quite some time, and they haven't taken that step to approach someone. And I often try and connect them with people because I feel like getting out of their zone would really benefit them. And the other side of the coin is I've had some fantastic coaches in my life who helped nudge me on an awesome path from being completely burned out, being miserable, to someone who's on an awesome path where you have these ideas and you commit to them. So that's something I'm kind of chasing with this show, helping people who are stuck, who might be interested in coaching but don't take that initial first step. My idea is by having these sessions, you demystify it. I think there's also a lot of education or educating to do. People think it's reserved for your executives and athletes, but yeah, I think a lot of people can benefit from coaching, and it doesn't have to break the bank, and it can set you on that right step in your first month as opposed to month 6. So that kind of sets the scene for why I'm trying to do this. Just to give you an idea of the status, I definitely know it resonates on the coach's side of things. I'm not sure it resonates on the listener side of things. So I built a small WhatsApp community, 15 people who owe me money, the neighbor, my wife's in the group, former coaches in the group, but that's my attempt to get to know the listener a little bit. I have 6 episodes recorded and 24 in the pipeline. I'm going to stop there.
Okay. So it sounds to me as like, well, coaching you're incredibly passionate about, and really the purpose of the podcast is to just spread that good word and introduce people to the concept of coaching.
Yes.
Okay. And commercially thinking about sort of what is it what's in it for you? What do you want to get from the podcast? And please be as like, think about it in the terms of a business. If I'm going to invite you to speak about it in terms of from a business perspective, what is it that you want to get from the podcast? Be selfish.
Be selfish. Okay. I would like to grow an audience. I would like to be able to launch or build a business around the podcast, to use that as my kind of vehicle to get into coaching myself. I'm also looking at speaking to a book publisher about what notes can I take now in month 1 that in maybe year 3 would put me in a good position to write a book about this process. Some of the fascinating people I'm going to talk to, I want to be able to reflect on that and share that wisdom.
Incredible. Okay. So you've probably already thought about some of the sort of income streams that you can get from both podcasting and coaching. So do you want to run through those with me, and then I can potentially help fill in some gaps as well?
Sure. So for podcasting, I've got one episode with a microbiome analysis company where you basically go to the toilet, you let out some data, and you send some data off, you flush the toilet, the rest of the data goes elsewhere. And they've been incredibly supportive. So they sent me the test for free, and I get a percentage of every test that is bought afterwards, which was, super cool, that without having a single listener to show for it, that's something that's in the pipeline. I'd like to grow on that. So sponsorship would be a big one. Affiliate marketing would be a big one in terms of the podcast itself.
Yeah. And then obviously coaching, sort of starting to build what one-to-one coaching, group coaching.
Yes.
Have you thought about
I'd love one-to-one, but I also realize I don't want to be stuck in a kind of a position where I'm just doing one-on-ones the whole time. I'd love to get kind of groups together. And so I had 2 ideas there, doing one non-profit idea in terms of a course for burnout, and also kind of a burnout cohort where you basically take people who are in a rough patch and you take them around almost like a safari around coaches who could have impact on their life. And but you asked me about the business and making money, but that would be a passion thing. I think there would be course ideas around that as well. Like, what's your, already starting with something simple as the wheel of life, prioritizing what section of your life would you want to start chipping away at?
Okay. And if you were to set an overarching, so if it feels to me like there's the purpose is kind of set, being a massive like proponent of coaching and pushing that, and the podcast being the vehicle to do that. But actually on the practical side of things, you're really starting to think like financial goals in the business. Okay. Is that to essentially get you to a point whereby you can make that decision between stepping out of job and doing this full time? Okay.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I'd go where I feel like I'm I realized this. I worked at a big company as a consultant a few years ago, and it was a robbery prevention program in 3 countries for an oil and gas company. And it was a fascinating problem. And I worked it for 3 years. I reduced their robbery numbers in their retail stores. And I'm getting to a point here, but I realized that impact felt by people is something that lights me up completely. And so that's something I definitely want to pursue further. And I think it's very evident in coaching. You're right there with someone. You'll notice if the one life changes because of your system, your product, etc. So that's something I want to chase rather than my work as a consultant benefiting a company. I want it to be a person.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Cool. Okay. So imagine you couldn't fail, and we hand in your notice tomorrow, and 2025 has everything in it that you wanted to achieve. What would it look like?
2025, I would want to reflect at something like 15 top quality episodes. I'd want to see some in-person kind of cinematic quality podcast episodes, which would challenge me in terms of the whole equipment and the practicalities of it. I think, it's difficult for me to see in terms of money coming in what is realistic for a year 1. I noted down for year 3, I'd want kind of salary that I'm earning now, around 100K. That's something I would want in 3 years. I would want to fill that gap by courses, by coaching, by any ad revenue from the podcast itself.
Okay. So let's focus on the 100K then. So, and I am going to, because I want to introduce a little bit of jeopardy here, because it encourages people to, 1, lean into the fear, because there will be some worries which will crop up. But 2, also, there's a lot of people who kind of, they slow and steady sort of transition can be very safe, but it can also be very frustrating. One of the reasons I'm not the biggest fan of goals, for example, is because goals can be very binary. It's either a yes or a no. I'm in or I'm out. We hit the goal or we fell short of the goal. You know, I can't remember what I was watching actually the other day. There was it was a guy who did a 30-day challenge. Yassine, he runs a brilliant TikTok channel, teaching people about how to create viral hooks on videos. And he was going to do $300,000 in 30 days. That was the goal he set for himself. And he started his video off where he's going, I failed. I'm so terrible. Like, I can't believe I didn't achieve this challenge. You know, just hitting 271,000 revenue in 30 is just not good enough. And I sent him a voice note. I was like, Yassine, come on. Who in their right mind thinks that 271K is bad? And he's like, and then he was like, it dawned on him. He was like, oh, okay, I get it, right? So goals aren't the perfect model, but let's focus on the 100K and let's imagine that actually that's achievable in 2025.
Okay.
Sponsorship, great. You can make a bit of money there. Affiliates, yes, make a bit of money there, but we're probably talking hundreds, maybe low sort of 4 figures potentially out of both of those. Could be more, but realistically, I'm going to focus on the coaching side of things, if that's okay, because there is a world where you could get your first coaching clients enrolled with your experience this year. Were you to imagine you were to sell a coaching program today, like how would you structure it? What would you do?
Right. I mean, I'd maybe target myself 4 years ago in a rough patch. What would I have needed to kind of chart my way through those 4 years a lot quicker? So that would be a good place to start with some of the basics.
So life coaching, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm anybody with a business idea, I chip away at it, but I think that initially would be something that I want to help people with. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Perfect. And what would you like their transformation to be?
That's a good question. I think clarity on what's ahead, what to focus on. I mean, thinking back, seeing that wheel of life for the first time where I graded my health a 2.5 out of 10. So Robin, I was 30 kilos heavier. I was obese. I've recently gone from the obese category over the overweight category to a healthy category, right? But just that moment when I saw that 2.5 out of 10 in my health and my daughter just born, and when I was on the ground with her, my back aching and stuff, that was a moment for me. So someone introducing that tool, as simple as it may be, it had a huge impact on me. So being able to help people with that is something I would definitely, that would light up.
So we have your Confused to Clarity life coaching program.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to sell. And Typically, on average, for the average person maybe going on this journey with you, how long would it take to create a transition for them, a transformation for them, with them?
I mean, for me, it would have been tricky coming out of burnout. When is the burnout over? But already in terms of setting your goals to improving that one category, which had these ripple effects in all other aspects of my life. Yeah, I'd say within a year, 6 months to a year, I started seeing real results.
So what, a year's a big commitment for a lot of people. I wish sometimes I flip flop into just mental mode where I'm like, I've worked with loads of coaches, and the ones that sell 12 months, it's hard because there's a lot of commitment there. So, and also there's a great, one of my favorite coaches of all time. He is the best of the best, Rich Litvin. He's got a fantastic book called The Prosperous Coach, which he co-authored with, I think it was Steve Chandler. They're kind of like known for being almost like the founding fathers of NLP. They're of that sort of ilk, and but Rich always talks about in his book, so he goes through this process of kind of coming up with the concept for a coaching program. How long should it be? How do you define the outcome result? How much should you charge for it? But he's very vehement, and he's worked with thousands of coaches, like that it should be no more than 6 months, especially when you're starting out. Because part of it as well is like, what if you get into like, a few weeks into a coaching relationship with a client, it's going wrong, and you've got 12 months which you've committed to with them. Like, whereas within 3 to 6 months, you've got space to course correct, and there's going to be an end point to it. Good for you as a coach, good for the client as well, and their experience. So I would go with 6 months. Okay, great. So we've got the Confused to Clarity 6-month life coaching program. That's your hero product. Knowing what you know currently, how much would you charge for that?
I mean, I'd have issues immediately with trust. Spending that kind of amount of money on someone, I would be focused on, do I trust this person? But let's say, looking back, 1,500 euros.
1,500 euros.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a steal if you think about the ripple effects, and the Peter who's now in front of you with the Peter who's would have been sitting in front of you a couple of years ago. And that's just, off the top of my head.
And how did you, just out of curiosity, how did you come to that conclusion?
I was thinking 5-6 sessions, maybe 300 euros a pop, in that direction. I mean, that's just...
So it's more about based on the number of sessions you get and how much you would pay for a session. Yeah,
I was thinking in terms of sessions. Pricing the outcome would be different. Yeah, it's invaluable. If the quality of life now, putting a price behind that. So that's why I went immediately to, well, sessions would be easier than the outcome.
Yeah, so something like coaching people often align it with things like therapy and stuff like that. But actually, it's really fascinating because there is an ethical line which you can cross with therapy. For example, you can't promise results and outcomes because it is unethical, and I genuinely believe that. So when you're talking about mind, body and spirit, and the deeper sort of physical and mindset related things, you can't sell based on that specific, like, hey, I'm going to fix you. However, and this is quite important, you can sell a guarantee, but I call it a perceived value guarantee. So how I would position that for you would be something along the lines of, well, during the 6 months we work together, we're going to focus on one spoke of the wheel of life. And the goal is to get you from a 2.5 up to, a good result might be a 6 or a 7. A great result might be an 8 or a 9, but the best possible outcome would be a 10. Which of those would you be most happy with? And now somebody will typically say, well, if we can get to a 6 or a 7, I can see that'd be a huge improvement. So people have this perceived value of the work which you do with them as a coach. And so that how you actually position that, we're probably jumping a couple of steps ahead, but this is relevant. How you actually position that is, well, listen, if we work together for 6 months and you genuinely feel you haven't received value for money, i.e. you like a 3 or a 4 or a 5 and we've made no progress, well, then we'll discuss a refund. So then so the coach now has skin in the game, because they've got to throw everything at this coaching relationship to make sure that person gets the improvement that you've discussed and agreed. So, but you're not crossing that ethical line into 100% money back guarantee. If we don't get you a 10 out of 10, then all bets are off.
So would you price the outcome, or would you price the session?
So I price on the outcome. So we're going to improve your score on the wheel of life, because that's what the client wants. And that's what is and it doesn't matter whether that takes 1 session or 20, the outcome is the same. So the analogy I use is the marine engineer. Do you know, have you
Okay.
heard this story?
No.
So the boat fails on a big oil tanker, and the marine engineer is called in to come and fix the engine. The captain watches him, and he hits something, and the engine fires back into life. And then the captain says, "Great, send me the invoice." The invoice comes in, and it's $100,000. And the captain's like, "Wow, $100,000! All you did was hit it with a hammer." And then the marine engineer says, "Well, it was $10 to hit it with a hammer. It was $99,990 to know where to hit it." So this is where coaching, the power of coaching comes into it. You can create an insight during one coaching session that could transform somebody's life. Now, I think there's another ethical boundary there, because there's lots of hypnotherapists, especially, that are like, stop smoking in one session. I'm like, yeah, you might be able to trigger the change, but is that going to create lasting change? So actually, that's where you could create the impact in one session, but you actually need the remaining 5 or 6 or however many sessions to then lock in that lasting change and build those positive habits. Mostly, it's a bit like, probably use a lot of cliched analogies here, but it's a bit like giving a man a fish or giving him a fishing rod and teaching him how to fish, right? The extra maintenance sessions are giving him the rod and teaching him how to fish, creating that permanent and lasting change. So we sell based on the outcome, and we build a system. We work to a framework that delivers that on repeat for each client that we work with. And also, we qualify prospects. You will qualify your prospects so that when you're assessing them, that you're really confident that using your framework, you can help that client. If you can't, you send them on their way. Okay. So bearing that in mind, sessions are now out the window. Okay. But you can always tie anything back to an effective hourly rate. Somebody could always say, we could go through the pricing scales. In fact, we will. And it's $1,000 a session. Well, it's irrelevant if that result creates the outcome, and that's a high perceived value for the client. It's fair and equal in that transaction. Okay. So forget about sessions. Let's focus on the result. 1,500 euros. Is there, you said you did your 3, 5, 10-year goals. Is there a future version of you that could be charging, I don't know, 10K for this package?
Yeah. For the right kind of client that has that kind of money to spend, yes, absolutely. So I was more thinking of my circles. Who do I know who would spend that sort of money? But no, if I have the right client base, 100.
Okay. So there was a little bit of you dipped into your own sort of money story, and maybe some of the people that money story.
Absolutely.
The challenge with that is, though, you can end up making a decision on behalf of all of your audience. You could have like the cure for cancer, but if you don't believe in the value of that cure for cancer, nobody's going to hear about it. And that's unfair. Okay. So I call it, you have to be sort of almost in business, you have to be detached from the outcomes within your business. So if you have a bit of a wobbly money story, money mindset, or whether it's a reflection of your friendship circle, and this is your business. So this is you with your wobbly money mindset. You take it into your business. Well, now your money story in your business is built on wonky foundations.
Right.
So very simply, all we do is we separate the two off, and Peter can still have slight issues around money. That's okay. And a few wobbles, but he can deal with it in his own time. But when he shows up for his business, he's a rock.
Right.
He knows that the business needs a certain amount of money each year in order to survive and create profitability, that then he can draw some money out and take it into his family and provide for them. Okay. And then he leaves the business and he goes back to his wobbly, dealing with his own money mindset in his own time. Okay. So there's a future version of you. You were very confident, 10K. Okay. How far into the future is that? Just give me a picture.
5 years, 3 years?
It's 3 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
3 or 5.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Let's say 3.
3. Okay, great. So in 3 years' time, found a client charging 10K for them. Wonderful. So again, with pricing, a lot of people see this pricing as being like very binary. I'm in or I'm out. It's a yes or no. It's too expensive or too cheap, right? That's how a lot of people think about it, because we try and solve pricing problems intellectually. Okay. But what we've done is we've just created bandwidth with your pricing. So we've got today, 1,500 euros session based, but that's fine. It's 1,500 euros for the outcome. In 3 years' time, 10K, right? And we've come to that conclusion very intellectually so far. So we're going to do a bit of a challenge now, where I'm going to invite you. You don't need to say anything as I go through the motions during this exercise. Okay. So I'm going to be looking at body language, tonality, pacing, but I'm going to have to invite you. Now I've told you that, I need you to just tune into your body, relax. I'm going to say some numbers, and when we hit a number, there'll be a reaction. Allow that reaction to surface and show, but you don't need to say anything. Okay. So winding back to today, we're possibly agreeing now that maybe €1,500 is too cheap. Would you agree with me? Maybe. Because you're changing people's lives here. Okay. And we will come back to the practical business side of it in a second as well, because there's two sides to this story. So 1,500, too cheap. Okay. So I'm going to say some numbers. Remember, just tune into your gut instinct. You know, don't try and keep a poker face. Just allow your body to react. We're going to sell it for some more money because 1,500 is too cheap. 1,800 euros, 2,200 euros, 2,500 euros, 3,000 euros, 3,600 euros, 5,000 euros. Skip.
I'd say €3,600 is good for now if you're looking at year
So
one.
that's where you were kind of just outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Starting to happen. Okay. Great. Okay. So straight away we doubled your prices. More than doubled your prices. Okay.
Thank you.
So I don't normally ask this question at this point, because is there anything stopping you from getting out and just starting coaching today?
Probably my mental bandwidth in terms of job, the family, the chaos, so I would want a bit more of an organized space to be able to offer my time to clients effectively.
Could you coach one person?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So you have got bandwidth to coach somebody. Right. Do you fancy having a bet?
Okay.
Okay. We can talk about the marketing side of things as well, because obviously you might be thinking, well, that's all great, Robin. I'm happy to sell it for 3.6, but who am I going to sell it to? So we can cover that off if needs be as well. From my experience, if you can start conversations with 10 people, even as a coach just starting out, the typical conversion rate is about 1 in 5, roughly 1 in 5 to 1 in 3. So if you speak to 10 people, you should at least get 1 client, but possibly 2, 3, or even 4 clients on board. But you can kind of, going through this exercise, you can stop when you've got 1 and just serve them, work them up as a case study, get a testimonial from them, learn from that experience. You can add in a second client if you want to at some point in the future, but I'd probably just get 1 under your belt to start off with. But here's the bet, and you can say no to this, but if you can find 10 people to sit down and do a consultation with, and all of them say no to you, I'll become your first client. I'll pay you 3,600 euros.
Wow. Yeah. I'd take the bet.
Great. So virtual handshake. And we got witnesses here as well. It's recorded. I'm being serious. I will. Okay. There's a couple of things which we're going to do though. So because I want you to win this bet no matter what, you're going to win. Okay. So my request is that probably because you're a good guy, you've got some good sort of connections, that there will be somebody who trusts you enough to buy this anyway. If you get to 5 and you've had 5 rejections, you know, after doing these consultations, just let me know and I'll do some sales training with you.
Okay.
Outside of this podcast arena. Again, that's because I want to empower you to be able to get that first client. It's not helpful if I just give you the money. You haven't learned anything from that, but I want you to understand like what needs to go into articulating your value and getting a client over the line, talking about next steps and things like that. Just to FYI, I've never lost this bet. So no pressure.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So let's recap. So I would approach 10 people, I would choose them, and I would pitch them the program being able to improve their lives. Maybe sit down for 30 minutes and try and find out where I could have value with them, and then position this program to those 10 people. Yeah. And you're saying that there's definitely a client in those 10.
There's definitely somebody out there who'll say yes to that. So yeah. So you're pitching a 6-month transformational program that's going to take somebody from A to B. Yep.
How would we target them? What would be, I mean, we spoke about burnout. That's where someone had the biggest impact on me. I mean, that's a way to kind of focusing on people who really need it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to identify those, but yeah, how would you go about identifying individuals?
Well, again, it comes down to like personal preference as to who you would like to work with. So burnout could be one symptom that you're looking out for, but it could be some kind of major life change. Maybe they've integrating your own story into this. You've lived in several different countries. So somebody might be staying in the same job, but relocating to a different country. They could be a great client for you. And I find that actually let's get into the marketing side of things and the niching side of things, because this is quite interesting as well. There's 3 layers to identifying who it is that you want to work with. So the first one is demographics. So that's relatively straightforward. You could write down a list of men in their 40s to 50s who are in a corporate role and based in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. So you could start to paint a picture demographically of what that person looks like. The second layer is called psychographics. So that's where you get into like their behaviors. where do they hang out, what sports do they play, what Facebook groups they're a member of, what magazines do they read, what cars do they like, what's their favorite color. All of these different, how do they dress? All of these things give us clues about where they're most likely to hang out with. What podcasts are they listening to? What books do they read? What events do they go to and conferences do they attend? So all of this gives us some really useful information, not just telling us about who this person is now, but actually how can we start to get into their world? So there's a few clues there, and we'll loop back on that. The final layer is what I call the identity.
Just like you were when you said you went out and you started networking events and you had coffee and cake with a lot of people.
Yeah, that's it. So it was, I knew that I wanted to meet some people. I wasn't proactively necessarily looking for people there, but is it any wonder that agency owners gravitated towards me because I had this amazing story to tell about? I didn't necessarily go into all of the detail, the gruesome details, but I tell a story about how I was able to find somebody to buy it off me. I attracted similar people because I went to that environment and said this, the same story with some consistency. The final layer is the identity layer. So this is where I realized in my early coaching days, I used to wear button-down shirts and chinos and smart, shiny shoes, right? Because I thought that's how business coaches dressed. I felt massively uncomfortable. So when I started wearing t-shirt and jeans, which is my, I like my surfing and cycling, and my favorite surfwear brand is Salt Rock, for those who know it, down the southwest of the UK. And that was what I wore to start off with. And is it any wonder that my ability to be able to connect with people, it felt like that improved, and my ability to convert people into my coaching improved. And that, interestingly, now when I get people into my coaching program and I start working with them, and I kind of then start to get stories coming out about stuff they do behind the scenes. So my story is cycling and surfing, my fearless side of me. But we've got people in the group who they'll go and do ultra marathons. Like one woman in the group's done 100-mile plus ultra marathon, which is nuts. Another person got divorced during lockdown and she goes wild camping on Dartmoor, like on her own, like with nobody else.
So cool.
Like even with a group of people, I feel very unsafe on Dartmoor, but so I realized this identity layer that sits like one in terms of my brand that I'm projecting, but also the types of clients that I'm attracting. So it does help if you choose people who, from a marketing perspective, who are similar to you. But the clues with the psychographics is this whole notion around like marketing 101. So for you getting your first few clients, you could sit behind a computer screen and do LinkedIn and social media and things like that. But there is nothing better than like meeting somebody in person at an event or a show, or I don't know what else, a conference, or inviting them for a coffee meeting or something like that, and looking into the whites of their eyes and shaking a hand and having an actual real conversation with them.
Yeah.
So again, with any coach starting out, and this is your journey, Peter, there is a bit of a heavy lift to start off with. You want to get out and meet people in their environments. You want to go to them and make it easy for them to come across you, but where you have that identity-based connection, and then start to do that regularly and often.
Okay.
And I always encourage like coaches when they're first starting out, work with at least 10 to 20 clients on a one-to-one basis to start off with. So a lot of people, again, I mean, I run a very successful group coaching program now, but it took me 8 years. Well, we launched it in 2019. So it took me 3 years before I launched it. But I cut my cloth doing one-to-ones, like 40 plus clients a year, one-to-one for those first.
You got your
years.
wings in the yeah.
So practicing the art of coaching, understanding like what frameworks you're going to lean into, who you are as a coach and things like that, developing that identity layer and getting comfortable with it. So yeah, you want to probably maybe the next, it depends on when you're going to create that transition. So imagine we work with one client. So we're going to come back into the role play now. So we're going to find 10 people, going to go out to these events, meet these 10 people, invite them to a consultation, find one person who says, yep, 3,600 euros, Peter, sounds like a bargain, I'm in. What's next for you at this juncture?
Well, I'd want it crystal clear what outcome I'm promising and the client I've booked, and how much time one gets, she gets for the outcome, and how that works for the individual client versus what would work for me in terms of time together, etc.
Great. So let's
mainly to put it, the practicalities of spending time with the individual.
Okay. So we can go through a very quick bullet list. Imagine that they say yes, you've got a coaching agreement which stipulates that they pay, let's say they pay 1,100 euros up front, and then the rest is split over 5 installments. So you've got the payment plan is in place, that you're going to deliver a monthly coaching session with them. They also get a 1-day intensive with you, which they can pull off at the start, the middle, or the end of their coaching with you.
That's
So
cool.
we're going to do 6 sessions plus the 1-day intensive. And we're going to do an assessment again at the start, the middle, and the end to make sure that we are progressing towards your
Okay.
goal that we've agreed. So
Yeah.
you've got all the imagine the structures in place.
Yeah.
Again, you can't fail. This is going to
Yeah.
go really well, this first client. You've
Yeah.
got a first client on board and you're thinking, what's the thought which comes to your mind?
Immediately, who does he know? That was my first thought.
Okay, so we're going straight into like growth mode. How can we get more clients on board? Wonderful. And now we've got 2 or 3 or 4 clients and you're starting to think family, work,
Yeah.
coaching, it's getting a bit busy. What next?
Yeah. I'd want to see what aspects of that value that one would be generating could be in the form of a course, something that could run in the background
So
where
you've
I
gone
could,
to like more passive means of income.
yeah, if there's a lot of the value that I'm bringing that could be ticked by a kind of a course format, I would want them to do that so that I can go into a more troubleshooting mode around it.
Okay. Let's rewind in the conversation back to when we talked about the goal, your goal of setting up a business and what a successful 2025 would look like if you went all in on it. What was the goal that you came to?
The initial goal was the amount of episodes. So we've changed that conversation
Come forward a
completely
little
since then.
bit further past that. What was the goal for the overall for the business?
To find a first client.
Yep. Forward a little bit more.
First 10 clients. Get the first client.
The financial goal.
Okay.
I'll lead the witness.
The 100,000.
100,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you?
I write that in my mind. I pegged it as the 3-year goal.
3-year goal. Okay, but we're trying to accelerate the process. I don't want you to wait 3 years. You know, because if this works and you're getting really excited by the coaching, you don't want to hang fire and it could be, hey, you got to strike whilst the iron's hot.
Right. Okay.
I'm just going to switch gears ever so slightly. So we're going to focus on something called goal focused pricing. Okay. So imagine if like the first few clients goes great and you're loving it. Just out of curiosity, how much would you, if you were going to just turn it into a course and sell that, how much would you sell the course for?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe it helps if we're specific. So what would I have paid for a course that would have gotten me from a 2.5 in the health category to a 7? Yeah, the same as for the coaching almost. I mean, it's for me, it's about, does it get the outcome, right? If it's delivered in a course or delivered in FaceTime or access with someone, I wouldn't mind really. For me, it would be about, I'll do whatever it takes.
So you're still seeing that there would be some of your facilitation as a part of this course. It wouldn't be like a pre-recorded course. Okay.
Right. No. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're into more of a group structure online course. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Cool. Because a common misnomer here is that a lot of people get very excited and then they create a DIY course for far less, like for $200 or $500 or something like that.
No, I saw it as me kind of troubleshooting on the sides. Maybe we kick it off, then you do the coach bit, then we do the recap together or tackle questions, and you pad it around that way.
Good, because I was so for clarity for people listening as well.
Yep.
So what I was just trying as a business coach, I was just trying to make sure that we knew exactly where we stood in terms of your product or service you're going to offer. If you'd gone down the route of like a 500 euro course, for example, I'd have said, okay, well, take the 100K and divide it by 500. And you would have gone 200. Okay, so great. So it was a struggle to kind of think about how we get the first client over the line. How have we made that leap that all of a sudden we can attract 200 buyers for a 500 euro course, right? So again, this is something called goal focused pricing, where we just kind of start to pull on the levers of like supply and demand. And on the supply side, do we have enough capacity to be able to deliver 200 units or something? On the demand side, can we stimulate enough demand for those 200 units? So you might be able to sell 200 people on a course, but can we market to 200? Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to now do it with 3-6. Okay. So because we're happy that it's a facilitated course. So 100K divided by 3-6 gives us roughly 30 clients. Okay. So you've got to get 30 clients a year in order to achieve 100K income.
Yeah. It's daunting, but...
Okay, talk to me about daunting. What does daunting feel like, mean?
I mean, we've done a bit of a quantum leap from what I mentioned initially to where we are now. Yeah, for me, if I had a free calendar, and so maybe the daunting part is juggling it with like tapering off career, where I'm in right now, ramping up on the other side, the coaching. So that aspect was daunting. If I had a free calendar and I need to find 30 clients and I have this bet going with you, yeah, there's no reason not to plow ahead.
Yeah. So great. So what you're not saying there is you're not saying I couldn't. Well, 30 clients. Wow, that's a lot. 30 clients.
The free calendar, I'd be like, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Okay. So we know that on the supply side of things, we've got the capacity to work with that. So what's your strategy for getting 30 clients on board, i.e. the demand lever now?
I would hope the podcast could play a role. That might be a touch point people might have with who is Peter Charles and what is he busy with doing. I would try and get out there. I would go to events. I would find out where people have money to spend on this kind of a life-changing trajectory, if you take my case study as an example. And yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn and how it connects people. What kind of a role that could play in all of this would also be interesting, but I completely agree with what you said. You need to get and meet people. Any events, I'd be 100% keen on attending.
Yeah. And imagine if, again, I know we're jumping about ever so slightly, but imagine if, again, that you'd gone, right, I'm going to, without having spoken to Robin, you were going to launch this thing at 1,500 euros. All of a sudden you need 66 and 2/3 clients in order to, achieve that financial goal.
And it was a real psychological kind of barrier or a psychological thing about what's the amount that you're really kind of okay with, and that changed drastically throughout this session.
Yeah, that's it. And you've got to imagine the dream business in my eyes is one where you've got double the income and half the clients. Because that's what we've ultimately ended up with. Not quite double the income, that will come later, but we have got to a point where you need half the clients, because we, just by changing the price from 1,500 to 3,600, by virtue of that means you only need 30 clients now to do it. And the thing is as well, so I'll let you on a little secret. My first year in coaching was actually there's a funny story behind this, which I'll share. So I had somebody 18 months into my coaching journey come into my office. I used to have, my practice was in an office in town. I'm in a little studio now outside my house. But she came into my office and she said, I mean, there was a bit of conversation which came before this, but the comment absolutely sent me flying backwards. She said, Robin, I think I'm a better coach than you, but I don't understand why you're so successful than me. I was like, okay, red flag. She wasn't a client at this point. She didn't become a client.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, let's break it down then. And I knew her, and I knew her profile, and I knew how active she'd been in terms of as a coach. So I said, oh, I'm just curious, how many consultations have you done recently? She started counting on one hand. She's like, 1, 2, 3. Or 4 or 5. And I went, oh, 4 or 5 in the last week's not bad. And she went, oh, no, 4 or 5 in the last year. So I was like, well, there's your problem. So my first year of coaching, and I rattled off these numbers to her, and I'll share them with you now. So my first year of coaching, I spoke at 44 events. So I did 44 speaking gigs. I did 33 podcast interviews. I set up my own networking event. So we did 12 of them throughout that first year, and we had over 600 people across all 12 events. So on average, about 70 odd people per event. Or possibly slightly less than that. But and I sat 125 consultations. I enrolled 44 clients. And so I listed off all of these statistics to her, and you could see her face just slowly withdrawing of the realization that she just not had done the volume of activity. I was effing exhausted by the end of that first 12 months, Peter. So all of that effort, 125 consultations, only led to 44 clients enrolling with me. 30 is about the limit, especially for a coach sort of starting out, even in those first 1, 2 or 3 years. 30 is probably about the natural limit for most people to enroll and work with clients. So that's why I was like, if you'd said 66 to me, I'd have gone, no chance. Probably maybe, no, there's a slim chance. That's not fair. There's probably a slim chance. Maybe there's a 1 or 2% chance that you could achieve that, because some coaches have. But then on the demand side, again, we get lulled into this. So you talked about going to events, meeting people, obviously getting the consultations booked and things like that. There is a side of this, though, that still feels very much like Noah's Ark style, like 1 by 1 by 1 by 1.
Mm-hmm.
So could you think of another way, maybe a better way of reaching more people?
Reaching more people, or enrolling people in a kind of an experience, a course, say, grouping people as a cohort? Do you mean reaching more people?
So even before that, so just making them aware of your brand.
Right.
So
I
how
mean,
could you reach
the
more people?
podcast, newsletter, those kind of things.
Yeah, but don't forget, you've got to get subscribers to the podcast. Got to get enough people to get the subscribers, the critical mass of subscribers into the email list. How could you do that in large numbers? Here's a different question, actually. Here's a different question for you. Imagine if by this time next week we meet again and you've generated 1,000 leads for your coaching practice. How would you have done that?
Can pause for a sec. I mean, ads and those kind of things, but I wouldn't, something sits wrong with me with that route, but generating 1,000 leads.
Generate 1,000 leads, or your favorite dog's going to get it by this time next week.
Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Most people do, because then all of a sudden you go podcast, email list, the things like that, they take longer.
Yeah.
So my route would be go and find a partner who already has large numbers of your audience, and imagine you're drawing a Venn diagram of their audience and your ideal audience, and we'll cross them over that little tiny subsection in the middle where they meet. Go and find a partner who would be willing to promote you and some kind of an offer, who already have like 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 people in their audience. Those partnerships are available. They are out there. Where a lot of people struggle is that they don't have the confidence to be able to put themselves out there and ask for that opportunity.
Interesting.
Or maybe construct a commercial reason for that person to open up their list to a relatively new coach, for example.
Right.
But again, because of the nature of what you're doing here with the podcast, leveraging a podcast to build partnerships and friendships with people to then start to do those sorts of things is going to be more than accessible for you. So I the simplest way I can rationalize this is, no matter what you choose to do from a marketing perspective, you always want to see how else you can leverage it. So getting
that option did not exist to me. I mean, I kind of thought in terms of, it's going to be interesting with this podcast. I'm going to speak to interesting people like yourself, their followings, etc. You'll maybe share clips of the podcast on your social medias, etc. So I'm getting reach like that. That's what my mind ventured into, not just now, but just in general, but actually partnering people and piggybacking off of their client base. Yeah, interesting. Wow.
So take me, for example. I have a list of 6,000 people, Peter. And if you put together an Ikigai session where you help people figure out, where they land, well, I'm sure there's a way that potentially we could make it work. So I send out an email or two to my list and we promote a free workshop that maybe gets you 100 or 200 leads. I couldn't get you 1,000 because my list just isn't big enough. But every single thing I do marketing wise, I'm always looking at leverage. How can I create an extra opportunity out of this? So take going to speak at an event, for example. Most people will just show up and speak, and they'll ask the audience, hey, here's a QR, sign this thing and connect with me on LinkedIn or sign up for my email list. And then they're like, job done. I would be thinking, right, for one, I'm going to hire a videographer to come in and film that so I can then drop that onto my YouTube channel or leverage it for my speaker one page or something like that. I might take along my little DJI Osmo Pro, and then at the end of my talk, go and film 3 people and say, hey, could you just give me a quick video testimonial of my talk? Like tell the audience what you think of it. I might also go and speak to the owner of the organizer of that event and say, hey, have you got any other events coming up? Or do you know anybody else who's got events coming up where they might like to book me as a speaker? So it's not just like the one, and a lot of people are very shy. The British thing, we don't want to ask for much, right? Very reserved, can possibly ask too much of somebody. But there is still a point there around like the timing of the ask and the size of the ask is quite important. So right time, right place, right person, and the right ask, they are hugely important. And provided you don't go too overboard with it, you can generally, you get a little bit outside your comfort zone.
So dare to ask.
Yeah, exactly. You can get what you want out of the situation. So, and that's what I would say. And it's not just coaches. Any business owner can do this if they do it well and right, and they make the right ask.
The only way I can describe what's just happened in this coaching session is almost, I don't know, see stuff my daughter draws on, and there are maps, and kind of describe it as a map, and you haven't ventured far in your mind. You just have this kind of circle that you can see in the map, and you've explored that circle, and you've opened up these completely different ways of thinking, which I'm going to go away. I'm going to digest this, and see how I feel about it. But it's opened my mind up. I suppose that's what people typically say. But for me, that image of a map, that's the circle that has been explored, increased quite a bit.
We've just we've gone from a manual map to a now Google Earth, and you can see like...
Yeah. What, if we just reflect on that session a bit, Robin, what were some of the turning points from your perspective?
What, for you
Yeah.
or for?
Yeah. Well, either with your client.
So the one which you experienced there about seeing outside the from a pricing perspective, that leap from 1,500 to 3,600. So actually, I didn't expand on that. You tried to solve the pricing problem very intellectually. You've gone right at 150 euros per session, 6 sessions, or whatever it works out to be. And this is the price that it's at. Pricing is very, and money is very emotional. It evokes a very emotional response in people. So what you felt when we got to around about 3,600 and you got gut reaction, that was your subconscious now overriding your intellect and saying, actually, you're worth more, Peter. You didn't realize it. Okay. So that is every business owner that I go through on this pricing journey with experiences what you just experienced there. The other thing as well is like from a marketing perspective, especially we live in this world where like social media is prevalent in this online 2D space and hiding behind our screens. And actually, first of all, getting out and meeting people, but also the fact that limits our opportunity in many respects. Partnerships where you can generate 1,000 leads, 10,000 leads, whatever for your business, they are more than achievable.
Yeah.
Quantify this, right? Old style social media marketing, probably the route you might have taken. I used to spend 30 plus hours a week paying £1 into the meter, on my social media to grow it. And I do one interview with a guy called Ali Abdal, and that generates 3,000 leads for my business and 250K's worth of new business, right? And if I were to, well, first of all, the 3,000 leads prior to that, so would have taken me, I think I calculated it was about 4.5 years to generate 3,000 leads. One podcast interview usurped that. Traditional social media marketing, 30 hours a week paying into it. All of a sudden now, I'm only spending probably 3 or 4 hours a week on partnerships, and that's it.
Wow.
So like at almost a tenth of the time, investing into these partnerships, which yield these far greater results.
One question just popped into my mind. What would you say I might say to my first potential client if they said, how many clients have you helped? Peter Charles, the coach. Okay, yeah, fine. You've got a career in security, but we're talking about my mental health. We're talking about my whatever part of the life wheel. Yeah. What would you say there? How many people have you helped?
So be honest, just say you're going to be my first. But here's the deal. You show up, we do the coaching work together. Obviously, there's a fee to be paid for that, but this is the goal that we're punching towards. And then I'd have a conversation around sort of, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, yeah, absolutely, Peter, I trust you implicitly, 1 being not so much. How much do you trust me to get that result with you if we were to work together? And they might say an 8 or a 9. And then I'd say, okay, well, why is it not a 3? And this is where it's really interesting. They'll start to come up with, well, you were referred to me by Robin.
Wow, my mind immediately went to, why is it not a 9? But you're going the other way. Why is it not a 3?
Yeah. Because then what would they imagine? That's the situation here. So I'm Robin Waite, never coached anybody. You're potentially, Peter, going to be my first coaching client. And I say, well, Peter, why is it not a 3?
Yeah, I mean, the way you've presented yourself so far, the arguments that you make, your personal story, that's why it's not a 3. Yeah, that's why it's 7.5.
Great. So those sound like great reasons to work with us. What if the 2.5 was just a little bit of more about just the unknown? The 2.5 out of 10 that's missing is just because you don't really know what to expect. But that's my job to fill in that gap for you.
I love that. I mean, it's so cool. Flipping that was very cool. Almost getting someone to argue why you're good, and reverse psychology, I suppose they call it, right? Fascinating. Okay. Any other turning points in the coaching session from your mind? If you just look back at what happened, I described the feeling a bit like, so you shook my head, and I need to digest, and I'm severely sleep deprived. So thanks for being an awesome sport. But yeah, that's kind of the sound I would make about the coaching session. Yeah,
it can be a little
in a
bit
good way, in a 100% good way. I need to go away, digest, calculate.
Yeah, so
Still.
It can feel a little bit like you've been sort of smushed around in a washing machine sometimes for a coaching experience. And not every session is like that, I should add as well. For it's not. So you can have lots of big insights in a session, but then the next session, either you can go into sessions and not have a single insight. It can still be a good coaching session.
Yeah.
So that's worth affirming. But I think with you, it was that you were kind of going to take a very slow and steady approach to it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually, I could sell it. you remember that there was one question which I asked you about? Well, what about just one client? Because just before that, you were like, "Oh no, I couldn't do it. Don't have the capacity. Busy with family." And I was like, "Oh, sure, we
Yeah,
could do one." So you
yeah,
went from 0 to
yeah,
1 in
yeah,
an
yeah,
instant.
yeah,
You know.
absolutely.
So for me, that's about just raising your awareness to what you think you could do versus then actually just on reflection what is available to you. And it's often like, who makes up these dumb rules, right? Oh, I can't work with any clients because I'm busy. Do you want a coaching practice or not? Right?
Yeah,
Can we just work with one? Who
yeah.
makes up these dumb rules that we can only put our prices up like once a year and maybe by 10%, right? It's always our own beliefs and our own ways that we think we should be working. You know, you can double your prices, triple your prices if you want to, and you can do it 3 times a year. Like, who made up this dumb rule?
I love it. Thank you for the bet as well. I'll be in touch. This is very inspiring stuff. I'd feel bad if we closed the call and I hadn't asked some of the questions that my friends, my neighbors, my wife has prepared for you.
Sure.
Let's see. A friend of mine has a carpenter business and he's struggling to grow and he's considering hiring more people, but he's also realizing doubling production does not necessarily mean doubling profits. What would your guidance be to someone who's an absolute expert in the field, a craftsman, but is kind of at this pivotal point? Do I grow? How do I grow? And when do I hire people?
Yeah. So interestingly, I had a client who does sash window renovations. So it's a carpentry based role. And so I've had this conversation with him, like, you know, several times over. We worked together probably starting about 7 years ago, 6.5, 7 years ago. And he had this challenge where essentially it was twofold. One, he wasn't charging enough for each project that was coming in. There just wasn't enough margin on the work that they were doing. And he was kind of still going out and doing like these grandiose quotes and proposals for people. But really, he could just go out to a job and say, well, you've got 4 windows, that will be 12 to 15K. Do you want me to run up a quote? Quite often, you know, 3 out of 4 people would say, no, that's way out of our budget. And he could just not do any quotes or proposals, but having the confidence to have the pricing conversation there and do it as like a bit of a bandwidth so that he could elevate the price if he wanted to was helpful. So first of all, like increasing the prices so that he could squeeze out more of a margin. The second thing, though, the challenge which they had, he used to wear it like a badge of honor that he had this massive long wait list. So he had like 6 to 9 months worth of work, like off into the future, which is kind of good. People see that as like delivering some kind of security. However, that cash is just sat there on the table, unable to collect because you're not doing the work that you can then get paid for. So actually how we dealt with it was, it comes under this notion of hire slow, fire fast. You wait until you've got this big backlog of work, and you know you've priced it accordingly, so you're going to get good profit from it. And then to unlock that, we just with Chris, what we did was we just span up another team. So we got another van with 2 guys, doubled down on the projects, and it didn't just halve. So that was like doubling the size of his team. It didn't bring the cash flow forward by a half. They actually managed to get through all of those projects in a third of the time, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I couldn't work out the mechanics of why doubling the team meant it accelerated their ability to be able to get through the jobs. And even really now to this day, I couldn't explain it, but it just meant they had to be a bit more efficient with the quoting process. They had to be more organized with the jobs. On certain jobs, they could put 4 guys on it, not 2, which obviously sped up the delivery of it. And they could be doing different tasks at the same time. So it's just a whole host of like, you know, efficiencies, which effectively, you know, happened there.
The other one is, how can you confidently set a price point without experimenting, especially in a small B2B SaaS market where the individual says, I don't have the luxury of experimenting because the market's so small?
Interesting. In the SaaS market, what specifically is their product sort of, what is it? Do you know?
Getting companies to hire the right people using analysis techniques, basically getting the right people, the right jobs, but also predicting people's career paths. So it's a kind of what I understand, quite a niche thing to be doing.
Okay, size of the market? Do we know roughly?
No idea. No idea.
And what price point are they sort of roughly at?
Also no idea.
Interesting. So my thought process on that is like, never say never. If your belief is we can't test the market, that's not constructive for like being able to, you know, find the right price point and grow your business potentially.
Right.
I would, however, there is a structure for it which we loosely touched on, which was the goal focused pricing. So if you want to earn 100k and you've only got capacity for 20 clients, well, your price point needs to be k. So
Right.
they could apply a similar sort of principle to that. It's like,
Right.
right, we want to grow the company to $1 million revenue. We've got the capacity for 5,000 people on the platform, and then you could loosely base your prices on that.
I'd also be fascinated what they would, if they closed their eyes and listened to you throwing numbers at them, when would they stop feeling comfortable, right? And if you prime them first, what's your first response? Whether that changes. But okay, so that's
But they can test it at any point. You know, it depends on, like, so SaaS is traditionally, people think, oh, click a button and buy. But actually, if they so HubSpot is a great example of this. And there's the founder of HubSpot wrote a brilliant book about sales. He essentially treated HubSpot as though it was, rather than it being like software sales, will sell it online. They actually had a sales team to go out and start selling it. And they did things like play the salespeople off against one another and set things around it. I'll try and dig out the name of the book, and then maybe we can share it in the show notes somewhere.
That'd be lovely.
So it might be that they need to turn to a bit of manual selling to be able to start to present their prices to potential customers and go through a sales process to understand and learn a little bit more about them, which they might feel is a bit of a step back if they've gone full SaaS and by now. But if it's a short-term pain to do that for a month, to test out different prices and do a bit of market research, that could be worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to them, or even more. I don't know the size of the company.
Yeah.
And another thing as well is, so if they're already doing that, they can already inject it into their existing sales process. So I bought a program once it ended up being like $9,000. But when they pitched it to me on the call, they said 12,000. And when my invoice came through, it's 9. And I was a bit confused. I was like, why did you do that? And they said to me, very honestly, they said, we were testing out whether people would buy at 12. We always intended to sell it to you at 9, but we just wanted to see if you'd say yes at 12.
How interesting.
So I was like, great. Well, I've saved $3,000 because the perceived value was less.
So you were happy?
Yeah. And then eventually they started selling it at 12. Don't make excuses. Like, get out there and just try and sell it. Like, do some research.
I love it. So maybe we turn towards the parting challenge. So tradition I'm doing here, where the spotlight is yours, and you think of what Robin Waite's billboard message would be to people who are either starting their own business for the first time. What would your message to them be?
It's two parts to it. First one is, like, if you've got an idea that's bubbling away, whether you're starting a business or in an existing business, you can get lost in just percolating and sitting on that idea and it never coming to fruition. And I find, for me personally, I find that really frustrating for me if I've sat on an idea for too long and done nothing with it. I'm one of those guys,
brooding or analysis paralysis. I've done that for sure.
I have to know whether something has potential, if it's going to work or not. So I'm like, right, just brute force it, just go and do it. So JFDI, basically, just do it. The other side of it, though, as well, is I'm aware that people do have different tolerances to risk. And this is where the whole fearless thing came in. You need to fear the things in business ever so slightly less that stop you from achieving the goals you want.
Can you say that again?
So you need to fear the things in business ever so slightly less that stop you from achieving your goals. So whether it be increasing your prices a little bit, whether it be standing up and doing a 60-second pitch, jumping onto stage and doing a TED talk, no matter what it is, because generally those are things which are going to massively advance yourself and your business further forward. There's only two things that can go wrong in business. You either look a bit dumb or you might lose a bit of money. And both of those can be mitigated, right? Either don't speak to the people who think you're stupid because they don't really believe in you anyway.
Right.
Or two, go and get a job and save up and pay back whatever money you lost, right? There's ways to mitigate it and you can make it work. Neither of those are bad. So you need to, and where fearless came from, actually, I was doing a talk and that statement I said in the talk in front of 150 people. And I had one of my best mates in the audience, and he literally stood up when I was mid-flow, and he went, "Robin Waite, the fearless business coach," and that's where that's where the brand
it comes from. Yeah. Bang! Oh, it's always so interesting hearing that where it comes from.
And I was like, "Thanks, Adam. I'll get on with my talk now. Sit down."
Sounds like a cool mate.
But yeah, a lot of the time, the things that we kind of build up in our heads, and even some of the things you shared, You know that they're just in your head.
Yeah, for sure.
You've created these rules for yourself.
Yeah.
It's just getting over that and stepping a little bit out, fearing them ever so slightly less, so you can just take one little step towards your goal.
Yep. Okay. And maybe the last one, and it doesn't have to be business related, just people experiencing chaos. What challenge might you set them for, something ridiculously small that they could start today that might help them in whatever shape or form?
So be kind to yourself. Again, like, where does chaos sit? Because chaos, you can have chaos, dogs, kids running around, like, wife or husband who's not doing what you want them to do, or being argumentative, or I don't know, somebody cuts you up at a roundabout. But where does the real chaos actually sit? Yeah, be kind to yourself. It's the simplest thing. It's like, what do you need in order to be the best version of yourself? And sometimes it might be taking Friday off to go for a massage at your local spa, or Wednesday morning to go and get your hair cut, or just to sit in the chaos and not get involved in trying to fix it. That's okay as well. There's lots of different ways to be kind to yourself. And coaches especially are the worst at this, Peter, because we want to help everybody. We've got this superpower. We can fix all of these amazing people through the power of conversation, and we want to go in and like solve problems. And sometimes all Mrs. Waite wants is for you to sit there and just go, oh God, I feel so sorry for you. Oh, God, it must be so hard. She just wants to be heard, just, that once, and not have her problems solved.
Robin, it's been an absolute pleasure spending time with you today. Yeah, I'm leaving this coaching session. My mind's a bit shaken up, but I'm inspired. I think you're a fantastic guy. I'm so grateful to have met you and to have this medium where I can reach out to you and say, hey, do we want to chat? So I'm really grateful that you spent time with me.
It's my pleasure. I'm grateful for you inviting me on as well and allowing me to coach you too. So thank you.
So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.